Welcome to the Powercat Podcast, the original K-State sports show. Here's your host, Tim Fitzgerald.
Welcome to the first Powercat Podcast of a new year. Fitz and Gills and Cole right here. Hold on, guys. We're missing something very important. StreamYard has moved some stuff around, and it's getting kind of hard to follow here. Boom. Man, StreamYard, why are you messing with my hopes and dreams? We gather here today one morning after Arizona State loses, a few mornings after Kansas State basketball wins, and about a week after Kansas State football won. And we're here to answer your questions from Wabash Station. Again, we don't have a sponsor. Nobody loves us. If you're interested in sponsoring, please reach out to us. I think we've got someone that we might work in a little bit here for a temporary sponsorship. But for now, we forge forward without a sponsor because we love you. Our sponsors are everyone at GoPowercat.com who supports us to talk, which we do a lot of. Boys, how we doing? How was your holiday, New Year? Gills, are you hungover?
I feel good. I'm good. How was your trip to the High-Low?
It was very nice. It was the last night of Miracle on Morrow.
Mm-hmm.
Saw a former employee / co-owner of the High-Low, Jess. She was working, and it was nice. It was my wife. If you don't know the backstory, I don't leave the house anymore. I've gone from the most social person to a hermit, and thank you, COVID, and cancer. But I don't go out. So she had to force me to go. I had a good time, but don't tell her I said that. I'm gonna have to cut this out of the podcast because she listens. But it was good. Cole, what'd you do?
Well, you guys were in the process of having fun and living up life in Arizona with the beautiful Chase Field in the background, which, by the way, I know people have hot takes about football games and baseball stadiums, but it actually looked really good on TV.
That's a good setup.
Yeah.
Other than the press box being in the corner and the band being right below us is a great setup.
Yes.
While you guys were busy with that, I was in the process of moving. I've got an apartment now. I'm moved places, so I've got a new little studio set up. Hopefully we can add to it in the future, but yeah, it's good. Getting ready to go back to my full-time job, which starts as you're listening to this today. So there you go. No more Christmas break for me.
Ladies, if you're single and looking for a man, both these young studs on camera are desirable, particularly for the vision challenged, but they also have cameras in their bedrooms. Think of the possibilities. On with the podcast. Questions from Wabash Station. Ryan Gilbert, you got it? You going to do it?
Yes, sir.
I don't
First
even know what
question
we're doing.
from Legacy Cat.
Hi, Legacy Cat. Nice to hear from you. Yeah,
obviously, after K-State beats
Legacy.
Cincinnati, where has this basketball team been?
Gills, you answer that. Where has it been?
I don't know.
That's the
I was hoping you
podcast.
guys would know. I mean, it's I think the break, they had a little time off away from Manhattan, away from the facilities, just away from everything to kind of catch their breath. And that goes for coaches and players, right? They had some time to just maybe hit the reset button. And, we saw just a different team against Cincinnati. We really did. We got that consistency that Jerome Tang has been talking about. And, I think maybe to answer the question, I know there was another one about this. I didn't include it, but Jerome Tang mentioned he simplified some things that he and his staff kind of came together and, didn't get into specifics in that press conference after the win, but they kind of made things just a little more simple in that game.
I don't know what that means because I don't think they were running anything too complex. And talking to Coach Yerk, Coach Maligi after the game, it's a process. He told me, it just took him a while. And I'm like, yeah, but it took you a third of the season, Coach. I mean, you put yourself in dire straits now with the NCAA tournament and having to win a lot of games in the Big 12. I mean, going 500 ain't going to get it done. I don't see that it's going to get it. You'll be 16-15. How does that get it done? So they got a lot of work ahead, but this was a great first step. They looked better defined on both ends of the floor, but mostly I saw consistent effort. I saw consistent focus. I saw guys understanding where they fit in. And Cole, I've been saying this for a while, but this team wants to be good. They need Coleman Hawkins and Doug McDaniel to come together in a way that we saw Keontae and Marquise do that 2 years ago. That team was driven by a pair of guys that played with each other and elevated everyone else. And we saw that against Cincinnati. So when it came down at the end of the game, other guys, the two Joneses stepped up huge plays, playing to their roles and just playing to win, not playing about your stats or your performance, because they didn't really play that well, guys. They played hard and played focused. They didn't shoot the ball that well. They had some defensive breakdowns, but they just looked more put together than any time this season.
It definitely wasn't an A game. And I think that's kind of why you're excited if you're a K-State fan, because I didn't feel like watching that game. I never felt like, oh, K-State's going to lose this game. Right. Like it was almost the exact opposite of what happened, Ryan, when they played Cincinnati last year, when K-State was behind 5 to 10 points the entire time. And then obviously K-State came back, made a run, and took the lead in that game before Cincinnati won it. But it never felt like K-State was going to lose that game. They just played and controlled the game against a Cincinnati team who Jerome Tang said after the game he felt like is one of the most underrated teams in the country. And I'll be honest, guys, like that is a really good Cincinnati team. They're going to win a lot of games in the Big 12. And I think that's an NCAA tournament team. For K-State, the biggest thing for me, guys, is you're right. They played with effort. And the fact that that wasn't their A game honestly has me excited. Because what is the one thing that Jerome Thames talked about? It's consistency. If they can consistently have that kind of effort, as it's not shooting the basketball, making the big plays. If they can consistently have that kind of effort, you look at their schedule and you're like, wow, they really can win some games. But again, it's one game and the greater body of work we've seen. And, you can look at this two ways. Has this team flipped a switch? Are they going to be better off, or are they going to regress to what they've been the first 11 games of the season? I don't know, but I do know that it was a good sign was that Monday? It was a good sign.
Yep. Tangible or an anomaly. We'll find out. We're going to find out this weekend / into next week when Ryan Gilbert heads to TCU, followed by Oklahoma State. We're making him leave town. I mean, if the team's going to play well, he's going to be out there covering them, and we don't want him around, right, Cole?
That's exactly right.
We can't take it anymore.
I don't want to be around Fitz. That's the biggest thing. But
I don't blame you. Sometimes I don't want to be around myself. But Gills, I don't know if this is a question here, but I feel like those two games are looming enormous because they're both very winnable road games right out of the gate for K-State.
Yeah, and that's something that me and Clint Stewart are going to do here on the Shoot Around Fitz. We're recording here just about an hour after we do this. So we'll do a lot of previewing, looking ahead at those games. But, the win over Cincinnati was great. Absolutely. But it's not going to mean much if you go 0-2 on the road. Kansas State, you mentioned it, 500 in this league, Fitz, is not going to cut it. You need to win away from home. And that obviously starts against TCU. Last year, K-State, I think, was 1-8. I believe, away from home. I think they only had one win away from home in the Big 12. And so K-State's just got to get not every game on the road, but you have to steal some. Defend your home court, go 8-2, 9-1, and then win 3 or 4 games away from home. And now you're looking at some really meaningful games on the bubble in Kansas City. But it starts on the road. Cole, back to what you said with K-State not playing their A game. That is what, is encouraging about this team, or about that game is, Brendan Hosden's 1 for 9 from the field. Doug McDaniel was amazing scoring, but he still had 6 turnovers. And I think that he can be better as a point guard. Moby and Buddy checked in for a few minutes here and there. They didn't really do much. And, so K-State could have played a lot better. And this could have been a 10, 12 point victory if there were just a few more plays that K-State executed. But when you play hard, the ball kind of just seems to go your way and go through the net here. So obviously a big win for K-State. They can get better moving forward, but you've got to win away from home and prove that you can win on the road.
Agreed.
Yep.
Totally.
From El Camino Cat, is Doug now the leader of the basketball team, or was his game and playing time against Cincinnati a mirage?
No, it wasn't a mirage. It's how he can play.
That was his upside.
Basically, he won a test of wills with Jerome Tang. And I don't know why he needed to do that, but it seemed like he wasn't going to play until he got his way, which was whatever is going on, he got away with, and he could start. I could do a whole bunch of things on the post-game press conference, but I'll just say, no, he wasn't the leader. Coleman Hawkins is a leader. He's a little bit quiet at times. Jerome Tang talked about how he's very proud of his passing, which is elite, but he's told him that's got to come second or third. You got to score. You got to lead this team. This team needs an alpha on the offensive end. And guys, he was. I feel like when he shoots the ball well from the outside, his whole game takes off, and he did. He was 3 of 5 from 3. But he needs to play at that level. I mean, he needs to find a way to, and if he can't hit the 3 to get it to the hole, shoot something, 15-foot jumper, he's got to be the alpha on the offensive end. He just does, because it relaxes everyone else. Nobody else feels the pressure. There's nobody out there saying, I got to hit a shot. I got to hit a shot. You got Coleman and Doug taking the pressure off you, then you can just go do what you're good at. And I thought that's what it was. Coleman Hawkins is the leader of this team. We all know it that are around the program. He is a role model in the locker room, on the court, off the court, a very bright kid. I'm going to be honest, I was really frustrated with him. Hadn't done a video on a kid that harsh in a very long time, but he's growing on me to the point where he's one of my favorite players in a while, because he is uber skilled. He just has to play in a higher gear. He can't cruise. Maybe you'll be able to cruise when you get to the NBA, because that's a lot of what that brand is now, unfortunately. But college, that don't work, man. You got to play your ass off, because everyone around you is looking to you to set the standard, and he set a high standard in this game.
I mean, he did play his ass off too Monday, Fitz.
Yeah.
That was, it was really impressive. The thing that I like most about Coleman Hawkins' game is that he's really turning into a 3-level scorer, right? Mm-hmm. He's one of those guys who's able to hit the 3 ball fairly consistently. The thing about him is he can create that shot on his own. That step back he had was lethal. And I feel like that might be the best part of his game, is creating his own shot. I mean, again, guys like Hassan, who we've talked about, they require somebody to create their shot for them. And that's okay. That there's a role in the offense for that. But Hawkins doesn't need that. And I think we're starting to see that whenever K-State needs a bucket, they're going to give the ball to number 33 and let him work, because he is the guy who, at the end of the game, I think K-State fans should want to have the ball taking that shot, because not only is he developing into a leader, he's really developing it into quite the player. And you're right. I think he's worn everything. He's taken all the criticism and maybe internalized it, good or bad, but he's starting to figure it out. And just like we've seen, if he plays well and this team starts to win, the fans will embrace him, because he wears his emotions on his sleeve. For better or for worse, that's what he does. And I do think he's a really good kid. I know this question was about Doug, and I think for me, the biggest thing with Doug McDaniel, guys, is like, go score, right? Like, go be that guy who can go get a bucket. K-State loves, specifically Jerome Tang, loves those small guards that can go score, go get a bucket. Tyler Perry wasn't able to do that last year. He just didn't have the same finishing ability that a guy like Marquise Noel has. But Doug McDaniel has that finishing ability at the rim. So I think, again, Big B talked about this. K-State needs its 2 best players to be its 2 best players, and that's Doug McDaniel and then Coleman Hawkins.
Let's not get confused here. Doug McDaniel, he's flawed. Off the court, he's flawed. He doesn't do everything the coaches want him to do. He's not particularly a great teammate. There's just some things I don't like. But on the court, when he wants to play like that, he's got credibility. He can get away with the other crap if you're going to play like that. If you're going to go out there and score 3 points and turn the ball over 3 times, you're not going to get away with the crap. But yeah, I hope this gets him kind of in line. I hope he becomes a better locker room member now once he's seen this success. But I'm just blown away by what Coleman can do and how he doesn't realize. I don't think he appreciates how good he is, guys. Yeah. I think he's so generous with his passing. He wants to elevate everyone to be closer to him, when the best way he can do that is to go play, and everyone will chase him, not rise up to him. He'll lift their play. And I think we saw that. It was a really encouraging. Do we have any Hausen? Is it Hausen? Hausen.
How many times do we have to tell you this? Goodness.
Hausen, because he pronounces it wrong. It's not my fault that he doesn't know how to say his own name. Do we have any Hausen questions?
Go for it.
Okay, Brendan, I love you, man. I wanted a shooter like you in Manhattan for a very long time, but do me a favor. I don't know how many shots you shoot every day, 500. But if you keep shooting them spotted up in the same spot with a direct pass inside out to you, you're never going to be a great 3-point shooter because 90% of your 3-point shots aren't that. You'll get that shot and you tend to make that shot, but you're moving, you're reestablishing your feet, your target where you're catching the ball is different. Everything about your shot is so mechanical within this narrow framework. Young man, you got to catch the ball off balance. You got to catch the ball in a funny place. You got to catch the ball over your head and turn your shoulders to catch it around you got to do a variety of things because that straight up 3-point shot is beautiful when you get it, and it's not very often. And once in a while you hit everything. That's how shooters go. But I think learning to shoot from different angles is going to be beneficial. That's just Coach Fitz. Back to Brian Gilbert.
Before we go on, next question. The fact that you guys both had to mention Coleman Hawkins when the questions about Doug just tells us everything we need to know about how important those two players are. When Kansas State gets that out of both of them, everybody, I mentioned this in the film study, like David Gasson just looked like he had a better game, when in all reality, I think Gasson's been playing fine all year, but he can't do it all on his own. He needs help from his teammates. Hawkins and McDaniel can get that night in and night out. I mean, Cole, you mentioned the 3-level scoring, right? That's tough to defend. If you can step back or blow by your defender or post up on a guy and bully him in the paint, like Coleman Hawkins, if he does that, if he replicates that moving forward, that's tough to defend. And then Doug, you can't let the complacency kick in after a really good outing. You've got to stay locked in, and I'm sure the staff is going to put an emphasis on that. Tang's been outspoken that he doesn't have a great but a good relationship with McDaniel. So both of those guys moving forward, man, makes everybody else around them play better. And so it's very cliche to say, we've said it time and again here on Go Powercat, but those two are really the key. You can't have one without the other.
Gilbert, next question, is Doug McDaniel starting on Saturday?
I don't know why you would pull him out. I would hope he stays in the starting 5.
I agree. And I appreciate 3-level scores. I'm a 3-level drinker. So it's an art. You give me a beer, I can finish. You give me a mixed drink, I can finish. Give me a shot. Oh yeah, I'll finish. So yeah, I understand. My game translates a lot to what we're talking about.
Are we done, Fitz?
Yeah, we better move on.
Thank you. From Wildcat, Arbai and Ugo redshirting. I believe they both need to, but surprised either would agree to it. Would make for a bright future on the court. And guys, if you don't mind, I can obviously no, they're not. Nobody's redshirting on this team, but
once you play, you're done.
Yeah. And so Tang has said that, I think, after the second or third game, nobody's redshirting. But, Kansas State's looking for consistency. And this is true for anything in life, not just a basketball team. But the more kind of moving parts or different pieces you have in something, the more chances you have of something not clicking or messing up, right? And if you can get your roster, your rotation down here, now we're in Big 12 play, you've got to start getting consistency out of guys. And, Castillo, Moby, and Buddy Rich played sparingly. And it was basically the starting 5 in CJ. I mean, that's basically what it was against Cincinnati. And so I don't know if Ugo and Bai and Taj, you can include him here. I don't know if that's effort, doghouse, injuries. They're just not good. I don't know what the reason is, but you can't just, for this team specifically, you can't have 10, 11 guys playing night in and night out. You need to get that consistency. And so we saw that against Cincinnati. Guys are starting to kind of define their roles. Doug was the scorer. Coleman did kind of the everything that you're hoping for. Hazen, okay, he's the shooter. He didn't convert on his attempts, but, the roles are kind of starting to carve themselves out. And I'm not writing anybody off that didn't have a big game against Cincinnati, but the consistency that this team has been searching for, it's much, much easier to get it when you have, 6, 7 guys in the rotation than 10 or 11.
Well, you said something interesting there that I want to ask you about. It was basically a 6-man rotation. Some guys came in on a very short leash and came out, but they played primarily those 6 dudes. So it was a tighter rotation than we thought. Okay, Ryan Gilbert, if you were going to add a 7th person to that rotation, who would it be?
I'd probably go with Buddy Rich, but I don't want to not give Castillo his chances, but Buddy Rich just has kind of that X factor-ness, so to speak, that the spark and energy he can provide off the bench, I think can change games. But we saw it against Cincinnati. Buddy Rich, I mentioned this in my film study, didn't do much. It wasn't terrible, but he wasn't good. He kind of got blown by one time. I pointed that out. He also just got stuffed at the rim. And so I'm not writing anybody off again, but I think Buddy Rich kind of gives, if you want the highest ceiling for this season, Buddy Rich. But if you're looking ahead and trying to mature Castillo for the years to come, obviously you want him to play. But Buddy Rich, I feel like he's got that X factorness to him, guys.
I agree. And I feel like the other big guys are going to have a role. There'll be a game where they need a rim protector.
Yep.
And Bay Fall will come in. There's going to be a game when
Bye Fall. We're going to correct you, Fitz.
God dang it. What happened to guys named Jones? Oh, we got a couple. Why these guys are pronouncing their names wrong. But anyhow, they'll have games when Gasson doesn't play well. When David Gasson is playing that hard, that inspired, you let him play, even though it hurts you rebounding. I mean, he's an active rebounder and he had 7. But K-State isn't a good rebounding team. I mean, they still got out rebounded, but they were so much more effective because those didn't translate into second chance points as often. But you got to play Gasson. And but when he's got an off game, we know he does. You better be able to stand up one of those other big guys and have him be capable. So I'd like to see one of them kind of worked in a little bit.
Gilbert, help me with the Cincinnati big guy's name.
Bye.
Cincinnati.
Bye house. Bye.
You know who I'm talking. The big rim protector that Cincinnati had, who seemed like he caught like 50 million lobs and missed like 49 million dunks. I was really surprised. Thank you. I was really surprised that Ugo didn't get in the game. I was a little bit because I felt like that might have been the time where if the staff felt comfortable, playing him in Big 12 play. Okay, you have a guy who's essentially, I mean, let's just call it how it is. He's more athletic than Ugo, but that's a guy who Ugo can, he can match up with. He can get some rebounds. He can kind of neutralize him on the defensive end. But the fact that he didn't play, guys, it really tells me all I need to know. You guys have been hitting the nail on the head with the rotations. I don't think that Onyenso or Fall are really going to have a role until there's an injury. Now, how many times have we seen it? When there is an injury, somebody will have to step up and make a difference. And I'm not going to sit here and say that, there's never going to be any injuries, because that's what happens in sports. People get hurt. So I think it's important for those guys to stay locked in and make sure that they continue to practice hard, because we didn't think Jerrell Colbert was going to have any kind of role until magically at the end of the season he's starting. And so it just goes to show you really have no idea. It's very hard to predict a basketball season, but they need to find ways to keep those guys engaged, because you know what? There's going to come a time where those guys are going to have to play maybe not significant minutes, but some kind of minutes.
Just have Mike McGurl, man.
Yep.
His freshman year. Burned his red
Here's
shirt.
a frustration I have. Jerrell Colbert was developing. I don't know if he wanted to leave. The coaches want him to leave. I'll just be blunt. He's better than the other two guys we just discussed. He may not be rated as high. He may not, whatever the reason is, but sometimes the guy in the transfer portal isn't better than what you have, because what you have is someone who understands what you want. My only problem with it takes time is, it takes time because you're rebuilding your roster every stinking year. And you're not just rebuilding your roster. You have to reteach them how to play what you want. You don't have enough foundation in the program to pass that on to the new players. No, this is the way we do it. When they're the offseason shooting there, this is the way we want it done. You give that up, coach is going to yell at you. There's none of that going on because they don't have a big enough foundation. Sometimes what you have is your best option. And I don't feel like they understand that yet. They're constantly window shopping. They're like that bad boyfriend that's committed, but I'm keeping my eye out. I'm just going to, maybe that chick's better. And turns out, no, you were better off the other way. I'm growing frustrated with that. They have to retain half of this roster. They've got to have 6 guys back next season. or this process will continue and it's unsustainable. You'll get lucky. You'll hit the right number sometimes, but other times you're going to miss horribly like they did at the start of this year.
Would you agree, though, Fitz, that as a junior, at some point, it's up to the player to kind of take onus? If you've been playing college basketball for 2 seasons, you willingly enter the transfer portal. As a junior, it's up to you, man. Figure it out. I understand, David Castillo. It takes time. I get that as a freshman. Even by fall, as a sophomore, I can give a little bit of grace to the younger guys. Man, when you hit your junior season, if you aren't producing, I don't think that's on the staff. I think that falls directly on the player.
Colbert was producing. I thought Colbert was playing good basketball, and
he was. Yeah,
I was expecting him to be even better as a junior. More weight, more experience, and he's gone. Maybe it was him leaving. I don't know, but if your entire roster is leaving every year by their choice, that's a whole nother problem. So, they've just got to streamline this process. They need to grow their talent. They need to. And look, I think Doug McDaniel from a roster situation is a really good pickup. You got a guy that can be here a couple years instead of one and dones constantly. Anyhow, next question.
Last question of the first half before we move on to football from Kat Incalo. After beating Cincinnati, what is the ceiling for K-State in the conference? Is a 500 conference record likely?
I don't have one game doesn't tell me enough about this team. I think their ceiling is higher than 500. I mean, this team's capable of beating teams, and that's what's been the frustration. Last year's team was bad. I mean, we could see that. Tyler Perry was playing out of position. They didn't have enough other parts. They just didn't have enough dudes. This team has dudes. And then the Naquan thing hits. This team has some players. Even guys we've mentioned that are on the bench could be really good players. So, until I see this consistently, I'm not going to say they're even going to be 500 because they could revert back to what they were. Hey, we're good again. We're good. This is what we are. And then they play stinky at TCU. Well, then where are we? Begging for 500. I feel like this team has the greatest room for being good and bad. They could win 5 games or they could win 14 games. I don't know what we've got yet. It's way too early. It's
a low floor, high ceiling, as we like to talk about in scouting. And I can't answer this question. Ask me after the game where they play Tuesday. They play Saturday and Tuesday, right? Ask me after the game on Tuesday, because if they find a way to win both of these next 2 games, I don't know if I'm going to be all in on this team, but I'm definitely going to be feeling better than I was probably pre-St. John's. I mean, that's, to me, if you win 3 games in a row, two of the 3 on the road, I don't care to start Big 12 play and you're Big 12 play and you're 3-0 in Big 12 play. I will be feeling a lot better about this team. If they go 1-1, the jury's still out. If they go 0-2, then you maybe are starting to think that the Monday was an anomaly. So these next 2 games are huge. I mean, it's crazy to say that the next 80 minutes of basketball could define the season, but I really don't think that is too much of an exaggeration, because if they go and win these next 2 games, we can start to have the conversations we were having in the beginning part of the season again, I think.
Agreed.
TCU's like if you lose to TCU, that's whatever. But if you follow that up with the loss to Oklahoma State, who is maybe the worst team in the league, then you've got a big problem. But guys, they play the way they played on Monday. Absolutely. They can go 500 or above. But the one thing that maybe to be concerned about a little bit is the Big 12 has some pretty dang good coaches, right? And whatever K-State did against Cincinnati, I know that we kind of talked about it. I don't even know what happened. Like, they just played better. Maybe things get figured out. So to jump on the bandwagon after one win like that would certainly be premature. So it can go either way, man. Low floor, high ceiling. Absolutely.
Well, that's a great first half. And if you want someone to talk about premature, Ryan Gilbert's your guy. We'll be right back after this break with more questions from Wabash Station. Love you, Gills. You're probably happy you're leaving for 5 days, aren't you?
I am.
You know what? I don't need you in town to do this. We're in the same town right now, and you might as well be in Chicago. We're still doing this digitally. We'll be back.
We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors. Welcome back to the show. Let's head back to the studio.
Cool.
This is like the 7th show in a row. I forgot to tell you to change that.
Cool. And I don't remember
what is it?
until it does it.
I don't understand what's wrong with it. Because
It clips the very end. Like it comes back and it clips the end of the voice. And I don't know how or why it does that. I don't get it, but I gotta fix that. Cool. Remind me. It's been effective plan so far. Welcome back to the Powercat Podcast. We just covered basketball. If you missed it, well, you can rewind. Now we're going to talk about football. I don't know if you know this. K-State won its bowl game. Now we're going to discuss with your questions from Wabash Station. Gills, speak.
First question of the second half from Momo Cat. Since we can no longer call the alternates cursed, will we see more next year? This is all you guys.
Momo, alternative uniforms. Yes, I think we will see something, but I don't think we're going to see anything radical. And that's not, look, would it be cool if they had like a lavender alternative and they had the cat script helmet and the Pennant Willie helmet? Yeah, maybe. But I think what most of us are fine with is different colored helmets with the Powercat, different colored pants that complement the different colored uniforms. And little details like if you got a one stripe helmet, you should have one stripe pants. Cole, did you notice that? I thought that was weird. But first of all, they showed us the pants before without stripes, and then they put stripes on it. But I'm like, why didn't you put one big purple stripe down the side to match the helmet you're wearing? Anyhow, I think that's what we want. You know what? And also, I would take a purple alternate. And I know we're all opposed to lavender, but our friend Mike Stanley, who does incredible mock-ups, has done one that simply replaces the silver on the striping with lavender.
It looks good.
And it looks amazing. It's on the shoulder. It looks particularly good on a purple helmet. Instead of having a white or silver stripe, you have the lavender stripe in the middle. It looks really sharp. And you know what? I would appreciate them at least mocking that up and see what people think. There's a great controversy about whether an entire lavender shirt, top and helmet would look good. I don't think we're going to ever change some minds on that because, you know, they still think colors depict sex, or gender. So anyhow, let's just do some simple things. Let's not make it too complex. And I literally am going to talk to Chris Kleiman about this. Zach Carlson nailed this. Don't make it a mystery every week. Put out the graphic before the start of the season. This is what we're wearing. Our helmet color, our shirt color, our pants color. Every game. So you'll know. If we're having a purple out, maybe they'll wear all purple that game. I don't know. But pre-plan it. So there's no surprises. There's no big buildup. This is just what we're wearing. Because that's what the alternate crowd does. We're just wearing this today. No big deal. Quit making a big deal of it. That was always the problem in my estimation. And let's move on and hopefully sell a lot of merchandise based on some alternate uniforms. Because that's what you're trying to do. Make money.
Yep. And that's part of it too, Fitz. Like you have your promotions lined up with your alternate uniforms. I mean, how cool would it be to, when they send out all that information through email, hey, you click on it, here is Fort Riley Day. They're going to wear, digi camo on the Powercat we've seen before. Okay, cool. It's something, you know what, there you go. It makes sense. I think for Ireland, the opportunity to include some kind of shamrocks inside of the Powercat on the helmet, I think that there could be a real opportunity there. Some kind of Irish theme when they go play in Ireland. I don't know if it's going to happen, but it probably should happen for branding purposes. So, I do think we're going to see. And I think the fact that Coach got up there on the stand and said, and the curse of the alternate uniforms is over, should just indicate that, you know what, they understand what people are saying. They get it. That you might not think they hear you, but trust me, they hear you. And these guys, especially Fitz, I know you did a daily delivery on that class of 23. These guys want to start to look a little bit These guys want to start to look a little bit more, I don't want to say modern, but again, you watch the college football playoff, Arizona State, they wear a million different uniforms, and you knew exactly who it was. Oregon wears a million different uniforms. You know Ohio State wore all red in their first playoff game. Guys, these are the brands of college football, and they're not just wearing one uniform. It is okay. And I think now people are starting to realize that the curse is over. So yeah, let's see some new uniforms. Even if it's just new helmets and pants, let's see it.
I mean, and Arizona State's a good example of a school honoring multiple marks. They played here. They had the Sun Devil on the side. They also put the ASU on the side. They put the pitchfork logo they use now on the side. They do a bunch of different things. It all looks good. And they've got yellow, white, and their maroon color, their crimson color. They mix all that in. They do a good job of their uniforms. They really do.
Okay.
You move on now?
Anything else about uniforms? Because you guys know I have nothing to add.
Next question.
Just move on.
From
could be in you.
3G Wildcat, what unit, if any, do you feel took the biggest step forward in the bowl game?
No, I think the offense did. Defense gave up 41 points. I'm not going to pick them. But I think both sides of the ball realized our young dudes really are really freaking good. I mean, we saw that in defense. The defense didn't get good until they went really young. Why is that? Offensively, though, I think the absence of DJ Giddens forced Connor Riley to be a little bit more creative and actually come in with a game plan that was really well defined to use speed on the edge and then pop it through the middle on occasion. They got away from it a little bit at the end of the first half and into the third quarter. But once they reestablished their speed game, it wasn't a game. It was a total mismatch. And I think it showed them if we played to an identity and were consistent about it, and that identity when it could be DJ Giddens running through the defense was awesome. But that was the only identity they ever wanted to play to. If you took that away, they didn't know quite how to define themselves. And I think this game showed we can do this too. And I think they're going to probably add another piece at running back to have a little more size, maybe. And then they'll be able to kind of shift gears. We got to do this. We got to do that. Few football teams are so good they can just do what they do. And you can't stop them. Those days are pretty much over. Nebraska and Oklahoma used to run the option. They said, try to stop it, but you couldn't because you didn't have good enough players. There's enough equity now and talent that you got to kind of scheme it up and play to different identities and do things, move around in your toolbox. And I didn't feel like K-State had a big enough toolbox this season by choice. And then they were forced to get some new tools, and boy, it worked. So I'm going to go with offense.
I think having Dylan Edwards in that bowl game without DJ was actually really good for the offense because it kind of forced Connor Riley to take a peek ahead and give him a little glimpse of what next season may look like. I mean, I'm of the opinion that, first of all, the offensive line played its butt off in that game, guys. Like, you go back and you watch that game, and the way that they're sealing the edge, they've struggled all season long to block on the outside. And I'll say it, I think Andrew Langing was a major reason why K-State was able to run outside. Carver Willis struggled mightily to try and set the edge at the right tackle spot, but Andrew Langing didn't. He was a butt kicker on during the Rape Bowl. And so I was excited to see the offense. So I'll agree with you, Fitz. I think the offense took the biggest step forward. I don't think that the passing attack was all Avery's fault. As I said in another podcast, you look at who he had out there at receiver, and he had essentially his third and fourth receivers as his second and third. And at the end of the season, those were the fourth and fifth guys. Nothing against Jaden Jackson and Dante Cephas, but not exactly the most dynamic threats at the wide receiver position. And Jace Brown obviously had an outstanding game. I was so impressed with Jace, his ability to block down the field. I mean, if you are of the opinion that you don't know what's going to happen with Jace Brown, just go back and watch that game because he was 100,000% bought in. His blocking down the field was amazing. Yeah.
And now he is. This is a damnedest thing. Come on, guys, just go play, man. Don't get wrapped up in off-field stuff. Go play. I'm just for life of me, I this is all NIL, I know, but geez, come on, quit getting distracted by financial stuff and let it impact your play, because that's in no way is that ever good for you.
Yep.
You've put on film a lot of games where you didn't bother blocking, and that's not going to do you any good in the future. If you want to make more money, if that's really all it's about, whether it's here in college or the league, you got to put good stuff on film. I just feel like people aren't worrying about that enough, and I thought Jace was outstanding in the bowl game in all aspects of his game. Boy, they played to his speed. They did such a better job, and a big part of that was Rutgers is slow, and not painfully slow. They're built for the Big Ten, which is not a speed conference.
Yep.
It's a physicality conference, and we saw that play out with Ohio State and Oregon. Oregon is speed, and Ohio State just beat them with physicality, and Will Howard played an incredible game. So it's a different brand, and K-State beat them with the Big 12 brand.
Gilbert, do we have any NIL questions at all for football?
No, sir.
Okay, so you brought up Jace, and I think it's important for people who are, maybe frustrated with, I don't know if it's necessarily portal recruit. If you're frustrated with portal recruiting, I don't know what to tell you. I think it's pretty obvious that this team is trying to find holes on the team and plug them with guys who can play immediately, but they feel like they have a really core base. And if you watch that bowl game, a lot of those young guys, you talk about which unit took the biggest step. How about the young guys? Fitz, you brought it up. Zayshawn Rich and Donovan McIntosh at cornerback look like two guys who can blossom into starters next season. And so for the NIL perspective, the reason why K-State is not going out and offering millions and millions of different guys in the transfer portal, I really believe they are concentrating their NIL focus on guys in-house. And there's a reason why, I would say they haven't lost sleep over any guys who've entered the transfer portal. And that's because they're taking care of their guys in-house. And, just call it how it is. Guys like Jacob Parrish, there was a big deal on the table for him if he wanted to come back to K-State that, probably would have been more NIL than had he would have been offered at any other institution. But he bet on himself. Same thing with DJ Giddens.
Yep.
Would have been offered more money at K-State than anywhere else, but he bet on himself. And so they're taking care of their players. And I think that's what's important. And guys, why would you not do that? Why would you not want to get a guy on campus, see him produce, and then take care of him, as opposed to pushing a bunch of money up front on a 17-year-old kid? You have no idea how they're going to be. I don't know. I think the way they're handling their NIL budget is first class, and they've done an outstanding job with that. And you're seeing the guys who are staying are producing on the field.
I agree. I mean, they're not going out and paying a bunch of money to someone to come into the program and then not be worth the money. They're paying guys for what they've proven on the job, which is what we all want from our workplace. Oh, great. You hired someone to run the department from outside and paid him a lot of money when probably there's three of us on the inside that would have been better at this job and more plugged into what the job's about. It's a pretty common occurrence in the business world. So yeah, I like what they're doing with it. Do they need more money? Absolutely. They need more money. And, there's some guys that maybe on occasion they'd like to retain. Look, I know this for a fact. They would like to have retained Kobe Savage. And it's not like he made a ton of money going to Oregon. They just made more than they were comfortable paying based on their overall budget. And so that's one that got away.
Mm-hmm.
But, guys like Will Howard, this is going to happen. There's not a world in which K-State exists, at least with the current donor base, even though we have some really generous donors. There's not the billionaire who says, I'll pay this guy whatever you want. That's not how K-State's going to operate, so they can't lean on that. They've got to pay the guys that are proving themselves, retain them, and there's something to be said about developing players within your system and that having added value. And I'm glad Chris Kleiman recognizes that.
From KSU Royals Cat, how responsible is Brian Anderson for the success at the running back position, considering he will now have two NFL running backs and some other backs who are very good in the past? Is he our best position coach?
There's an argument to be made. There really is. I mean, look, Deuce Vaughn was Deuce Vaughn. Ryan Gilbert could have coached Deuce Vaughn and he would have been successful. I mean, honestly, and I don't mean that to detract from Brian's coaching, because now we've seen Coach Anderson do amazing things with DJ Giddens. I think he played a significant role in DJ's development. And now, I mean, we saw 2 young guys step up and play really well. Yeah, I think you make that argument. I really do. And kudos to Brian Anderson, because he's been consistently cranking out dudes, and I don't see it ending. And I think we all, including myself, overlook his value to the program.
Yeah, I think BA's ability to manage a backfield this year will be something worth monitoring, because I don't necessarily think that, this season with the usage of Dylan Edwards falls on his shoulders. I think that probably is more of an offensive staff as a whole. I think those guys would probably tell you that they needed to find ways to use Dylan more, because Dylan and DJ were such different players. But this upcoming season, it's going to be interesting to see how that rotation works with Joe Jackson and Dylan Edwards, because those 2 guys are a lot closer in skill set than DJ and Dylan were. And so, I think BA's done an excellent job as a recruiter as well, guys, like getting those guys on campus and getting them to stay. Let's think about that for a second. If you're Joe Jackson, you redshirt your first year, then you sit behind DJ Giddens. There's a lot of guys who might say, oh, I got this guy named Dylan Edwards in front of me. I'm going to enter my name in the transfer portal and go play somewhere else. That happens a lot. But he's obviously trusting BA. He has a great relationship with the staff. And K-State has quietly built a 2-headed monster that I think will compete for one of the arguably the best backfields in the Big 12 next season, because of BA's ability to recruit those guys, get them on campus, and help institute them in a game plan.
Agreed.
DJ Giddens was unranked, and I know that he should have been, but our 24/7 recruiting guys aren't idiots, right? So there was certainly developing that went on there, and so it looks bright as well in the future with Joe Jackson. I think there's a really good potential in his game as well.
And let's not forget, I mean, JB Price and Devon Rice are 2 running backs who they brought in the last class, and Devon Rice was returning kicks at the end of the season. Fitz, you brought up maybe bringing in another guy. I think that's definitely a possibility, but they want to bring in the right guy. Right. And if they don't, I think they're willing to say, hey, they've got 2 guys behind them. On top of, guys, there's another really short running back in Montario Elston who's coming to Kansas State, who's like 5'5". Go watch his highlights if you haven't. Just type in his name and then huddle after that, and you'll have a lot of fun for about 5 minutes, because he's one of the most electric players in the Midwest from Arkansas. But they've got a stable of guys who I think they feel comfortable that can be solid backups behind both Dylan and Joe.
Good.
Last question. It's from Yeehaw Ema. Not sure if we've had that one before. Welcome to the podcast if you're new. What is the number 1 need in the portal for the football team now?
Well, could we say nose tackle? But now that Uso's coming back, I don't think that's an issue anymore.
My sense is this coaching staff wasn't overly elated about their choices in the portal at nose tackle. So as soon as they found out Uso would come back because of the JUCO ruling, they're like, yeah, solved. Probably another receiver. That's where I'm going to go. I probably want to get another receiver. And I'll be curious to see if they've come to peace at corner a little bit. Those young guys played well. So does that mean they're going to roll with them or bring in another guy? And you got to be careful. I mean, you could force those guys out into the portal if you bring in another veteran guy. I almost would bring in another young guy to put into that mix. And, you got a frontline guy out of Oklahoma. Now go find another developing guy that can give you depth, because I think what we're learning sometimes is when you bring in a guy because you feel like you're young at a position, by the end of the year, your young guy is maybe better anyhow. We saw that at safety this year. Jack Fabris should have been on the field more. So I think that could happen at corner too. They bring in a guy and then they realize, oh, these young guys really did make a lot of progress, because we all make the mistake of thinking where a player leaves off at the end of the season is where he's going to pick up. There's a lot that happens in between with physical and performance development in that off season through spring football. And I think they can bank on that. Look at middle linebacker. They were forced to go with Austin Romaine, literally forced by circumstance a year ago. And now they have a Big 12 level middle linebacker heading into his true junior year. You can make the argument that of the true freshmen that played, Jace Brown, Avery Johnson, and him, that Austin remains been the best of the three.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes having trust in your young guys is the best answer.
I don't know to answer this question, which is not an answer, but I would be very cautious about bringing in another receiver simply because if you were going to handle your receivers the way you handled your receivers this year, then that's why I would be cautious. But if you were going to bring in a veteran guy, if he's not producing and you're okay with essentially eating that money, right? We talk about it in baseball where you can cut a bad contract. You just got to eat. The Royals did it with Hunter Dozier. They signed him to a big deal and he sucked. And so they cut him. You can't obviously cut a guy mid-season, but if a guy you pay money for isn't producing, you have to be okay with sitting him on the bench and giving a young guy a shot. And so if you're willing to do that, sure, go bring in another receiver. If you're not willing to do that for whatever reason, then I think you have to roll with some young guys because you do have some talent there. So that would be my caution to the wind with receiver. But I think any guy that they bring in is going to have really high upside. So I'm really not too worried about that. We didn't talk about offensive tackle. That's probably another position I would look at because just simply for depth purposes, I mean, they don't really have a lot of, middle-aged guys. You've got young guys and old guys, but you don't have a lot of middle-aged guys at the depth. So bringing in a guy who's maybe an older guy to bring in some competition there might be kind of, you don't have to hit a home run with it, but bring a guy in. And again, if he's not very good, then he doesn't have to play. There's nothing that says the transfers have to play immediately if you feel like you have solid depth there. And I think that's something that fans are going to have to understand. They've got depth. If they bring in a guy, that doesn't necessarily mean that guy's going to start.
Agreed. Gills, that's it, isn't it?
I agree.
We did a heck of a job in that second half. We were efficient. We were mean. We were lean. The first half, the host talked way too much, and I'm going to have to discuss that with him. Big weekend for K-State basketball. Ryan Gilbert's headed to Fort Worth. Sorry, Fort Worth. He's yours. I've literally told
Big
the
B
TCU
is mine.
TCU's athletic department that he's your problem for the next 3 days. If something happens, he did it because of TCU, not K-State. Big road stretch, Gills. Do you think they get this done? 1-1?
I think if K-State goes 1-1, any sane fan should be happy with that. 100%. So
he said sane fan. I don't think that exists. And believe me, I've been dealing with Texas fans who literally could watch a murder and say, he didn't kill him that bad. That's it for the Powercat Podcast. We appreciate you watching, listening, whatever you're doing here. Maybe you're printing this out in Braille. I don't know. We appreciate it. Now we're going to go do other things. And I'm looking forward to having a weekend at home. But no chance of Ryan Gilbert dropping in. It's constant, Gilbert. It's never letting up. It's constant.
This has been a GoPowerCat.com and Spirit Street production. Please support this show by subscribing to this YouTube channel or follow us on your favorite podcast platform.